Hello, and welcome to Zap the Gender Pay Gap, the podcast series where we expose the elephant in the room. The elephant's name, the gender pay gap. I am coming to you from Memphis, Tennessee, located on the banks of the mighty Mississippi River. Nestled in the southwest corner of the state, Memphis is home to the blues, barbecue, and so much more. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker. I am delighted you are joining me for the first episode of my podcast series, Zap the Gender Pay Gap. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker. I'm often asked, so why create this podcast series? And really, it's threefold. One is to expose the elephant in the room. I want to make it visible, and I want to uncover it and reveal its true nature. Second, I want to disclose some pertinent facts about this elephant in the room. It could be new and previously unknown information, but to bring it out into the light so that you will be aware of these pertinent facts about the elephant in the room. And then thirdly, the goal is, how do we dispose of it? How do we get rid of this elephant in the room? And to be able to address the effects that the elephant in the room is causing. So really threefold. My objective in this whole series is to expose, disclose, and dispose of the elephant in the room. Now on today's episode, I will be exposing the elephant in the room. You may be wondering, what's the elephant's name? The elephant's name is the gender pay gap. So you might be asking, what exactly is the gender pay gap? Another question you might be asking is, and why is it important? And why should it be important to me? I'm so glad you asked. Those are the very questions I will be answering and information I will be sharing with you on today's episode. I started my corporate career at a time when discussing pay with coworkers could literally get you fired. No wonder we shied away from talking about pay. What about you? Can you relate? Do you feel uncomfortable when it comes to talking about pay, even talking about pay to your boss or your supervisor? Now, times have changed, thankfully, and talking about pay is not taboo, at least not like it used to be. But even so, much is still kept hidden and in the dark about the gender pay gap. So that's why I will shine a spotlight on this elephant in the room to reveal the nature of it and some facts about the gender pay gap. Now, why do I call it the elephant in the room? And I'm a word buff and I love defining words, finding synonyms and antonyms for certain words. But according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the elephant in the room refers to an obvious major problem or issue that people avoid discussing or acknowledging. And as we go further, I will share with you a little bit about some of the major problems that this issue actually poses for women in the workplace. And not only that, but for those they support in their families and their quality of life, how it affects their quality of life. Now, let's just go into some more definitions about what is the gender pay gap. The gender pay gap is also known as the gender wage gap. Simply put, it represents the average difference between what a female earns compared to what males earn in the workplace. Overall, and generally speaking, women in the workplace are paid less than men. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the first year for which comparable earnings data can be found is all the way back in 1979. Now, that's a lot older and farther back than some of you in terms of your age, but that was 44 years. But that's how long this data has been tracked. So how much is the gap? Now, in 1979, when the Bureau of Labor Statistics started capturing this data, on average, women earned 62% compared to what men earned. That means the gap was what? Correct. The difference is 38%. The gap was 38%. Now, between 1979 and the early 2000s, progress has been made. The gap has been narrowing. But since 2004, the female to male earnings ratio has remained in the 80 to 83% range. It has gotten in that range and it has remained there. It's kind of stuck there, right? And so today, can you guess what the female to male earnings ratio is at this point in time? It is 82%, which means that there's a difference of 18%. Now I have a question. Do you remember the payday candy bar? I know I do. The original payday candy bar was caramel covered in peanuts. Now, after Hershey's purchased it, they added another version and they covered it in chocolate. I don't know which one you prefer or you would like better, but I know I prefer the original one, the caramel covered in peanuts, right? Now you select the one you prefer, and I want to give you an example. Now, just imagine that at payday, instead of you getting a full candy bar, what if you only got 82% of that candy bar? What if when you opened up the wrapper, it was not 100% of the candy bar as you expected, it was only 82%. Well, in essence, that's what's happening with women in the workplace. So regardless of the one that either chocolate covered or which one you prefer, imagine just getting 82% of that candy bar. And imagine that that is happening every payday, not just for one payday. Now, I have a degree in accounting, and I also earned my designation as a certified public accountant after I started my career in paper manufacturing. But you know what? You don't have to be an accountant to know that these numbers are not good, especially if you are receiving the 82%. Now, let's just say for the sake of argument, let's just kind of do some calculations. Now, if women working full-time earn 82% of what men earn, that means the gap is 18%, as I mentioned earlier. Now, let's use just a conservative number and say a woman's annual salary is $50,000 per year. So if 50,000 is 82%, how much is the gender pay gap in terms of dollars? How much does that 18% represent? Yes, you are correct. It would be $11,000. So closing the gap would move and bring the salary from $50,000 up to $61,000. Now, of course, this is an example of being able to close the gender pay gap. But can you imagine getting a sizable raise? Could you imagine what a 18% increase could do to your budget? How much more financial breathing room would that give you at the end of the month? What about having more money than month? What would it feel like to have more money that month, being able to pay your bills and have some left over? And also, how amazing would it be to not only feel that your contributions at work are valued, but to know it by the size of your paycheck? Now, I have been involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in some form or fashion my entire career. And quite a bit of energy has been focused on diversity and inclusion. So let's just talk about that a minute. Diversity is about getting women and people of color in the room and get them visible in the organization. Inclusion is about once those women and people of color are in the room and visible, now that inclusion piece is that they have a voice, they have a seat at the table and a say at that table. And then this piece around equity. This equity centers around fairness and being valued. And as I mentioned, a lot of energy has been focused on the diversity, getting people visible, and inclusion, and giving people a voice, but not so much or as much on that equity around pay equity. And so the more I researched this and I reflected on the work that I've done, the more alarmed I became about the fact that women consistently earn less than their male counterparts. Now, if you are a woman in the workplace or you know someone who is, it is probably alarming to you as well. And one of the things that I want to do is that this 82%, this gender pay gap and the difference of this 18% is really only a tip of the iceberg. Now, today I've exposed some of the aspects of the elephant in the room, a topic that quite a few people may not want to talk about or not talking about, but that's so important. And that elephant in the room is that women in the workplace earn on average 82% of what men earn. But that's only one facet of it. In the next episode, I will disclose to you 5 alarming facts about the gender pay gap. I am so grateful for the opportunity to share with you about the elephant in the room, and I look forward to talking with you next time about some alarming facts about the gender pay gap. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Zap the Gender Pay Gap. Please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow me wherever you get your favorite podcast. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.